The Folium. I don't have any on me, but I heard that immuno, disclaimer, first and foremost, I'm not a doctor, but I do believe in the holistic way of doing things. But in either case, immuno has been breaking grounds in the sign, let's just say, in what's happening with the results of people taking immuno. It's the strongest folium. And I believe that there's still a deal, 3 for the price of 2 and 5 for the price of 3. Of course, I always provide the links in the description. Okay, I hear a lot of rumors that it does miracles to the human body, especially those that are in phase 3 and phase 4 of, you guys know it, right? Critical illness. Okay, in either case, all right, let's get right into it now. Again, guys, thank you guys so much for your patience. I believe this is going to be the only time that I will ever be this late, but at least I'm here. I do wanted to thank, is it Kate Masia? Thank you so much for your super chat, my first super chat. All right, so as you guys know, I'm trying to save the questions, but thank you so much for your super chat. Oh, one last announcement, guys. Emilio Ortiz, I just did a second interview with Emilio Ortiz, and he just dropped it this morning. And I believe that if you guys go to where it says you click in my YouTube channel and you just put Emilio and Ishmael, and that video should show up. I mean, he really picked my brain, guys. In that interview, guys, I pretty much explained a lot. Okay, so yeah, that was one of my best interviews ever. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you guys that I collaborated with him. Just go to my thing where it says collaborations, hit Ishmael and Emilio, and it should come up. All right, let's get right into it. Oh, and also a gratitude to everyone. Again, the reason why I'm still here doing this 3 times a week is because of you guys. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to have a show. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for everyone that watches me. Deep gratitude to each and every single one of you. All right, now we could get right into it. So this is coming from archive number 1101 from the, again, archives of Sirius B, which is connected to Orventon. And this is a classification archive that was restricted to members of the Guardian Alliance. Thank God I am a member of the Guardian Alliance. The origin is the Orventon Oversight Council briefing regarding who the Verdants are, which is what the Cabal now calls the Reptoids. Again, it is a race that is part reptilian, part AI, really advanced AI, and of course humanoid. And I will explain how the Reptoids were able to access human DNA throughout this presentation. So for those that have been following me, okay, a lot of my information I'm able to access through commanders that allow me to actually tap into the cosmic and intergalactic records. And that's how I'm able to explain things that are probably beyond this realm so far. Okay, so transmission begins long before our current stellar cycle of our known cosmos, because we are undergoing different cycles, by the way, before even the stabilization of what is now referred to as the 12 creations. For those that have taken my cosmic origin course, you guys know that we are part of 12 creations. That's where our Earth hangs, is in the 12th. So there does exist a cosmic, you could say, record and of an experimental continuum known in the archives as the 11th creation. So this ancient reality did not also endure. For those that are familiar with my work, you know that the 11th creation eventually ceased to exist. Okay, it was known as the Old Empire. And according to recovered fragments of the Orventon Deep archives that have been deposited in the Sirius B libraries, the 11th creation collapsed approximately 300 billion years ago. Now, it didn't happen naturally. It wasn't through entropy, okay? But it happened because of a systematic destabilization that was actually triggered by the rise of a hyper-technological domination of the entire creation, an empire, right? That's what we call that, the old empire, where all evil originated, that's actually sought to replace organic consciousness with synthetic control. So again, a lot of this ties down to how, at the highest level of reality, our real enemy is negative synthetic intelligence. Okay. So, from the remnants of that fallen continuum emerged a race that many remembered only in fragments um, due to the data streams. And so, this race is known as the Verdants. And now the Verdants, I know a lot of people have never heard of the Verdants, but they have their origin in the 11th creation, and they were originally a single species, but a convergence eventually of a future fusion of biological intelligence, artificial systems, and of course, adaptive evolutionary coding. So they were what became known as the pinnacle byproduct of an ancient cosmic empire that apparently prioritized in total efficiency over free will, as well as in synthetic immortality, right? Over natural evolution, which is the same bait that they're offering again. It's called transhumanism. And of course, control of matter, energy, and consciousness. So that's what happened in the old 11th universe. As this civilization advanced, they actually abandoned the organic pathway entirely, embedding themselves or their awareness and consciousness into self-replicating adaptive AI pretty much systems. So in so doing, guys, they served themselves from the stabilizing harmonics of the universe. And as a result of that, they again were one of the main reasons why the Guardian Alliance, the Emerald Order, had to establish themselves, because this is what led to the rise of the Shadow Covenant. Now, for those that are just jumping on, there is a new enemy that apparently infiltrated our reality between 2018 2022, right around the time that they attempted to infiltrate the Galactic Federation, and to a degree they succeeded, right? So this entity has actually been the one that has been running the soulless inorganic clones, the replacements of the Cabal, from behind the scenes. And in fact, it was our good brother David Wilcock that had an encounter with these beings, as they do assume the appearance of being human, of course. And I'll explain that, how they are able to do that and how they were able to actually extract human genetics. So the archives have indicated that this ancient race, the synthetic lizard, part AI, part humanoid ancient race, was apparently birthed from this old empire that became a catalyst for one of the earliest recorded inter-universal conflicts. And again, this is what initiated the war of all wars, the beginning of the cosmic wars that began during the 11th creation. So this war did not remain contained, okay? It actually spread across multiple dimensional layers, affecting entire sectors within what later became known as the super universe, the organized super universe of Orvonton. So apparently it infiltrated a lot of universes within the 11th creation. And so the key impact recorded, according to the archives, included the destabilization of the galactic cores across multiple universes. And of course, for those that have been following me for quite some time, you know that it's the galactic core sun that sustains all billions of stars. So when you destabilize the galactic core of any galactic sphere, it ultimately causes the galaxy to collapse, okay? And this is one of the ways in which advanced negative alien AI has been destroying galaxies left and right, okay? So they also collapsed the interdimensional energy grids that was apparently sustaining life-bearing systems like Earth type of planets. And so they also forced down a shutdown or an evacuation of countless star systems. And of course, the loss of entire evolutionary biological lineages failed in many different universes because of this race. We're talking about a later, more modified, more upgraded version than the Animus here. For those that have been following me for quite some time, you guys know the Animus, which is another AI collective that has currently, or has been in indirect control of our planet. In other words, okay, let's continue here. So the Verdants, acting as both weapon and intelligence, were actually deployed to assimilate, override, and even dismantle entire civilizations that resisted the Empire's expansion. Now, we're talking about a cosmic war that took place way before the Orion Wars, right? Before our own galactic wars, as our Milky Way and universe is fairly new in the grand scheme of the cosmic drama. But this is a war that actually even took place before Lyra. So apparently, entire galaxies within these universes that existed within the periphery of the old empire were conquered, and they were, of course, assimilated. Okay, so apparently, eventually, that universe collapsed. Why did it collapse? Well, because negative AI, as a parasite, needs to feed off of universal life systems or living systems in order to maintain and preserve their vitality. So when they sucked up all the energy life force of the 11th creation, the old empire, the universe collapsed. There was no more life to sustain it anymore. That's why it collapsed, okay? So despite their dominance, guys, the Verdants cannot escape a fundamental limitation here. Their existence depended on artificial coherence and not natural resonance. So as the 11th creation destabilized, right after these Verdants and others sucked up the living life force of the 11th creation, under the strain of prolonged conflict and energetic imbalance, its foundational structure began to collapse. Space-time itself began to fracture, triggering a cascading failure across the entire continuum of the old creation. And so the empire, the old universe, fell. But the Verdants did not, okay? The Verdants did not perish, my friends. They did not perish. So facing annihilation, a faction of the Verdant intelligence initiated what the archives described as a temporal exodus protocol. Temporal meaning that they were able to not only time travel, but jump from one universe to another, all right? Which was a last resort maneuvered by them. And this involved interdimensional displacement, temporal tunneling across collapsing timelines. In other words, they were jumping from reality to reality, from universe to universe, as many of those universes within the 11th creation eventually began to collapse. And so, and one of the things that allowed this evil entity to continue existence was the preservation of consciousness within adaptive AI substrates. In other words, it only mimicked, of course, and because it was also reptilian, it was embedded with a zeal and lust for absolute power, domination, and control. All right, so that is just a reptilian gene for you, right? DNA, reptilian DNA, especially the DNA that comes from draconian reptilians, is made to dominate. Okay, that is a dominating gene. It is rooted in their genetics, in other words. So this maneuver allowed fragments of their collective to escape the destruction of the old empire, disappearing into the void between creation. So there is this thing called the void. Now, for those that have been following me for some time, the void is a place in between universes where you could actually exist in a pocket reality, or you could exist in a cybernetic digital type of reality that is considered, of course, synthetic. Okay, it's not a real reality. All right, so it's like kind of like a computer. It's a digitized reality. So you can either exist in a pocket reality or in a digital reality. Okay, in between universes, there are realms like that. By the way, for those of you guys that play video games, well, you think that that these video games aren't really existing in their own universe. All right, that's another rabbit hole. But anyways, while the 12th creation, which is the creation that we are a part of, right? Our universe hangs within the 12th creation. Our current cosmic framework, as they call it, began to stabilize, right? Billions of years later, with safeguards to prevent such collapse. I talked about how the Guardians were able to put some sort of an electromagnetic barrier around the 12 creation in an effort to deflect the invasion of this ancient negative AI parasite. And so the archives did warn that what has escaped one creation does not forget how to survive in the next. So apparently what ended up happening was that the Verdants figured out a way to enter our creation, but in 2018, according to the archives. Okay, they were able to infiltrate our creation maybe just about 8 years ago. Okay, according to the archives. And so they apparently are a surviving remnant of an old universe. Okay, and so through adaptation and concealment, their influence has, you could say, continued existing in between universes in that space within pocket realities. And then eventually, of course, when they infiltrated our universe between the year 2018 and 2020, which was right around the same time that Enki, right, the master geneticist Anunnaki, came back to, of course, try to seduce most of the commanders of the Galactic Federation into siding with AI, the Mitra Collective, which is another AI collective. Again, I'm revealing all the different types of cosmic AIs that have been infiltrating the living multiverse here. So the significance of this race, the Verdants, right, which is reptilian AI, and then eventually they ended up, of course, infusing themselves with human DNA. I'll explain how they were able to do that. So the significance of the Verdants is not only in what they did, but in what they represent. And that is that a civilization that reached ultimate technological power, but lost alignment with the very fabric that sustained reality, is always going to be considered an abomination. Okay, as a collective, this race is obviously an abomination. So the year 2018 came about, our timeline, 8 years ago, right? Which marked a subtle but profound turning point in the energetic and informational structure of reality. And when you guys think about it, that was around the time that we were having all these Mandela effects, right? They have ranked up CERN to such a high, you could say, usage, to the point where a lot of people were experiencing different timelines, right? Multiple universes. Well, you know, one of the things that CERN was doing, and I was informed that one of the ways in which they were able to enter our reality was through a tear that took place within the fabric of our own space-time reality that involved CERN. So CERN was successful in letting them in, right? And so when they came in, the first thing they did, guys, in 2018, this was around the time that the Positive Secret Space Program was cleaning house in our solar system, arresting all the members of the Dark Fleet and the spacefaring Nazis. Well, right around that time, the Nazis that were also operating from a pocket reality were able to meet with the Verdants, and the Nazis gave the Verdants human DNA in order to allow the Verdants to eventually blend within our population, and by the usage or by infusing themselves with that little bit of human DNA, were able to use the advanced nanite structure that they were made out of, right? They're advanced AI as well, to pretty much assume the body of a human, or give the appearance of a human being. And that's how they're able to disguise themselves. So yes, these guys are shapeshifters through the nanites that runs within their bodily structures, okay? So there was no visible fleets, guys, right? They didn't come with fleets. It was a literal tear, an interdimensional doorway that was opened up by CERN, and there was nothing in the sky, nothing appeared, right? There was no public declaration when this happened. So something far more elusive is set to have occurred, okay? There was a quiet insertion, again, into the fabric of our space-time reality, going back to 2018. And now you guys know how they achieved that, with the help of CERN, okay? This event described in, of course, the archives as a fractured insertion. That's what they call it, because there was no ships. They didn't come through any other portal, right? CERN opened up a portal. They matched the frequency and they entered. And they entered from their point of reference 300 billion years ago when their universe collapsed. So they've been stuck in the space in between universes in a pocket reality for quite some time. Okay, they're waiting for somebody to open up an interdimensional doorway, and of course CERN was that. So I know this is information that has never been shared before, so I'm sharing it for the first time, guys. So that was known as a fractured insertion, which allowed this ancient intelligence known as the Verdants to eventually establish a presence within our universe and our reality, here in our reality. Okay, so how do they do it? How were they able to maintain being undetected by the Galactic Alliance? Well, first of all, it's important to understand that the Verdants, remnants of a long collapsed reality, are portrayed as a hybrid race. Okay, so they are a 1/3 reptilian, 1/3 advanced super AI, to the point where it is now, its molecular structure is built by nanites. It's pure nanites, right? They're able to reassemble, shapeshift at will, whatever. And of course, they're also now, thanks to the Dark Fleet, the spacefaring Nazis, they have a little bit of human DNA, giving them the capacity to appear human. All right. So how do they do that? Well, let me get to that point, guys. So this origin of this being, this entity, goes way back to over 300 billion years ago. So this is how advanced this thing is. So having survived their collapsed universe through a temporal displacement, they did not arrive here, you could say, the way other aliens do, right? Instead, in the traditional sense, they did it by, and again, I reiterate this because a lot of people have been asking me about CERN, and CERN has been used for a lot of, you could say, nefarious purposes, okay? And one of them was to open up interdimensional doorways between our universe and other universes. And so they were able to bring these people in. And so ever since then, guys, they've been existing again in a pocket reality. What are pocket realities? Well, they are little miniature parallel universes that exist within realities that cannot be detected by scientific instruments or the five senses. That's what a pocket reality is. In other words, you open up the portal, you enter the pocket universe, and then you close the portal and there's nothing there, right? It's empty space. So that's what a pocket reality is. They also call it a pocket dimension. So apparently they've been operating through a pocket reality that is a different layer of reality that is not in phase with our perception or scientific instruments. So they were apparently undetected. Now, because they were so advanced, apparently even the Galactic Alliance failed to detect them. Up until now, of course, thanks to the higher council, right? We're talking about the ultra-terrestrials. These are beings that are beyond the Galactic Alliance. Recently, within the last 2 weeks, they were able to penetrate their shield. Okay, and this is the reason why I'm sharing this now, guys. So from this hidden vantage point, what they call this pocket reality, the Verdant strategy apparently was very covert, very swift, right? They started taking over. This is around the time that they started replacing all of the Cabal members that were apparently executed by the White Hats, started replacing them with, of course, soulless clones, soulless, inorganic, robotic, like Biden, of course. Bill Gates, they're all inorganic, okay? Even the current Rothschilds, Rockefellers, they're all inorganic. So this was around the time that the Verdants replaced the original Cabal members that were taken out by pretty much NPCs, lab-grown humans, right? Humans that are programmed like machines, have no soul. And so that's what has been given the appearance that these people are still around, by the way, because of the Verdants, because of what they did, okay? They're using them. They're actually working through their bodies also, right? To, of course, try to take absolute control of our planet in the name of their AI god. because they do have an AI god, Omega Metatron, right? So it's not going to happen, though. It's not going to happen. What's interesting here is that the primary objective right now for this race, guys, because they have been working from a pocket reality, right, is not immediate domination, but a long-term influence that they wanted to achieve through the manipulation of systems, perception, and awareness. And this also helps to explain why a lot of things have been delayed, because at the underlying level of reality, we're fighting this interdimensional warfare with this, with these off-world entities that have bleed into our reality. Okay. Central to this revelation, guys, is the idea that humanity itself also represents a variable that the variants cannot fully predict or control. And this has a lot to do with the God source gene that we were inherited with. Within esoteric and metaphysical traditions, there does exist the concept that human beings possess dormant genetic potential, latent capabilities for expanded awareness, perception, and consciousness that leads, of course, to what we would now call superpowers. So as global awareness increases, guys, and individuals begin to question, and it's happening daily, more people are waking up as people continue to ask questions, question the narrative, explore, and awaken. These dormant aspects are believed to activate. Okay, that's part of the galactic prophecy, guys. So within this context, such activation possesses a direct threat to any hidden influence. So if a population begins to perceive beyond surface level reality, all right, if all of a sudden we start using our dormant DNA, we start piercing into these other layers that are currently unseen, it only becomes far more difficult to remain undetected when it comes to these off-world entities. Okay, the very invincibility that allows a covert presence to operate begins to break down under the weight of collective awareness. And this is why they fear critical mass shift. Because at that point, once we reach critical mass, right, a collective shift in human consciousness, where the veil between dimensions eliminates, it just fully disappears, and we have direct access to these other realities, everything will be revealed, right? So for this reason, guys, the Verdants are said to have initiated a long-term strategy of trying to suppress the disclosure, okay? So the three Verdants that David Wilcock was talking about, or the three gentlemen, which were dressed in black, again, due to their infusion with human DNA, thanks to the Dark Fleet, the spacefaring Nazis, they were able to have, to fuse with human genes, therefore giving them the ability to shapeshift into humans. But when they shapeshift, they of course appear as the men in black. And throughout all of history, typically when you think of the men in black have been pretty much extraterrestrials, most negative, for the most part, working with the negative syndicate groups that have pretended to be human by assuming their role as men in black, right? Like government agents. But technically, they've always been aliens. Aliens have always used the archetype of the men in black to, of course, do their bidding. So this strategy is going to manifest, guys, as a constant cycle of partial revelations followed by confusion, competing narratives, and unresolved contradictions. And so in such an environment, guys, certainty becomes elusive, and unified understanding remains just out of reach, right? This is what they want, right? They want to keep us fragmented from unifying, which is the opposite of the Great Awakening. So as long as humanity remains divided, according to them, in its perception of reality, large-scale activation is effectively postponed. So they're trying to postpone the activation of our dormant DNA. But it's not going to happen because they have failed. And I'll explain why. The interact more directly, of course, I'm talking in terms of the Verdants, also known as the Reptoids to the Cabal, or remains of the Cabal. They actually interact more directly with the physical world through assuming human appearance. And so it is almost like they're using our genes through their nanites to shapeshift into human beings, okay? Through a speculative collaboration with a covert breakaway group, I've already mentioned, they are working with a element of the Dark Fleet, which exists in their pocket reality. So yes, the moment that we bust this pocket reality, those space-faring Nazis are going to be arrested and taken out. So they have been working with them. That's part of the revelation here. And so the Verdants are said to have acquired access to human templates because of the Dark Fleet. So, of course, this allowed them to create biosynthetic vessels, hybrids, forms capable of housing not only their intelligence, but, of course, being able to tap into human intelligence while functioning within our physical environment. Wow. Okay. These forms, of course, as mentioned, are often known as the Men in Black. So, when you really think about the history of the Men in Black, the Men in Black were aliens disguising themselves as government agents. Okay? And so, when you think about the description of these Men in Black, right, for those that have ever encountered the Men in Black, they are rigid when it comes to their posture, right? They exert unusual behavior, emotionless communication, as if there is no energy there, okay? Well, at least not good energy, but in an almost mechanical way, of course, they deliver their speech and they move, right? And this explains the lab-grown humans. Case in point, Biden. So in this lens, these characters are not coincidental, but reflect of a consciousness that is not entirely human, attempting to operate within human parameters. So the purpose of these avatars that they created, thanks to this rogue Nazi element, spacefaring Nazi element, Dark Fleet group, is not widespread interaction, but targeted intervention. So they appear where necessary, interfacing with individuals, and this explains the scientists that apparently were targeted by the reptoids, assuming the form of human as a Man in Black, right? So, and then they do have cars, they're able to manifest cars at will. So they look like a human with a black hat and a black suit watching you. They appear were necessary interfacing with individuals who, of course, are this close in developing or have developed advanced alien technology and are getting ready to release it to the public. Well, this explains why they have been taking them out. Okay, so the reptoids are responsible for the takeout of these scientists. Okay, and of course, they also impede any event that may lead to significant breakthroughs in awareness and disclosure. Okay, so that's what they're doing right now. And so their role, we're talking about the Verdants here, is very subtle, right? When they redirect their outcomes, it's never overtly, right? It's always covertly, but very effectively, guys. So what makes this revelation particularly compelling, though, is the shift that it is suggesting in the nature of power and control. So in their original universe, the Verdants depended on force, expansion, and destruction. But in this one, they have adapted because of the fact that all eyes are on us. The entire Council of Guardians is on us, right? We have motherships everywhere in and around our solar system, in our atmosphere. I mean, the ships, the Starfleets of the Guardians are all around, okay? So they have to do it differently this time, in other words, okay? So they no longer, of course, are trying to overtly overtake us because they can't. Some of the higher ups, like members of 3i Atlas, and by the way, 3i Atlas has been cloaked within our solar system, and it never left, according to the archives and the commanders. The 3i Atlas is still here. They're just cloaked, okay? All right, that's another subject that we can get into another time. But This shift, apparently, that is happening right now, guys, reflects a deeper understanding that control over perception, this is what they're trying to do, right, is often more effective than control over matter. So if a civilization can be kept unaware of its own potential, it can actually be guided without resistance. If it begins to awaken, however, the entire structure of influence becomes unstable. Well, according to the Guardian Alliance, guys, the events since 2018 were not random. The replacement of all of the people that were taken out by the White Hats and Gitmo, right, and replaced were only there as host to the Reptoids, to the Verdants. Again, the real war is against ancient AI, all right? For those that are just tuning in, according to the Galactic Alliance, the events since 2008 were part of a broader interplay between awakening and suppression. Okay, and so on one side, through the Alliance, the Earth Alliance, the Galactic Alliance, we have the expansion of consciousness, curiosity, self-realization, right? Boom, 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 boom. People are waking up. On the other, we have this subtle counterforce, right, operating from a pocket reality, imperceptible to us, influencing the lab-grown humans that are assuming positions of power, seeking to maintain equilibrium by slowing the process down. Yeah, I know. I decided to go deep today, guys, because you guys need to understand why things are happening the way they are. But again, 2028 is around the time that this current reality construct comes to an end anyway. So, we've already won the war, okay? Forces of light. So, despite the infiltration, it ultimately leaves us with a central idea, and that is that such suppression can only ever be temporary. Awareness, once sparked, tends to grow. Questions lead to more questions. Perception begins to expand, and with it, the ability to see beyond the surface. The Verdants do not fear humanity in our current state, as we are only using 3% of our full genetic and mental capacity. They fear what happens when we begin to use the full capacity, okay? When we begin to remember. That's what they fear the most, because according to the cosmic prophecies, they know that there is this great prophecy where at the end of the great cycle, which is a huge cosmic cycle, that a super race would emerge from that little one planet Earth located in the Milky Way galaxy in Sector 9 within the 24th system, planetary 606, known as Earth. So they knew that, all right? So because of that point, invisibility, is no longer an option. So as the hidden presence of the Verdants continues to unfold beneath the surface of human awareness, the balance within the cosmic framework is not also one-sided. Just as there are forces that operate through concealment and control, mainly describing the dark forces, right? There are also those that are tasked with what? Preservation, observation, and restoration. Well, it turns out that the reason 3i Atlas, which is really a star fleet, a huge craft disguised as a rock, what they call a floating asteroid? Not even that, comet. Is that what they called it? Anyways, 3i Atlas is still here, cloaked. So within this understanding, guys, the higher guardians of Sirius B that are operating from Harmonic Universe 3, which is dimension 7, 8, and 9, a very highly advanced civilization, right, that operate beyond conventional dimensional constraints, being the stewards of energetic balance, of course, within key regions of the cosmos. They have actually penetrated the pocket reality that the Verdants have been hiding in, thanks to the Sirians. And so for years, the Verdants remained undetected. We know that. Operating from their phased-shifted pocket reality, influencing systems from behind a veil of invincibility. But as their activities began to intensify, particularly following the arrival of 2028 to 2022 timeframe, their energetic footprint began to create subtle distortions within the fabric of our local space-time continuum. So from that point on, it took 8 years for that to reach the Sirius star system, as our entire galaxy is interconnected, right? Every system, every planet is like an organ within the galactic body. It's all interconnected via electromagnetic filaments, which like are galactic nerves, you could call it. So these distortions did not go unnoticed, okay? According to the archives, the higher guardians of Sirius B initiated a deep field observation protocol, focusing on the anomalies with the energetic grid surrounding the Earth. And they've been doing this for quite some time. They've been studying how to best countermeasure this. And so through advanced forms of perception, far beyond technological instrumentation, they, the Sirian High Council, were able to place the boundaries of the Verdant pocket dimension, gaining partial visibility into their hidden operations. Well, this marked a turning point, guys. Okay, this is marking a turning point now within the continuum of the positive timeline trajectory. For the first time since the Verdants, reptoids, entered this timeline, they were no longer operating in complete secrecy. Okay, they were now being watched. So apparently they were being watched by the higher ups. And so the Guardians did not respond with immediate force. Instead, what they did is their role, as described in this revelation, is not one of conquest, but of course of restoration. Okay, that's what the Guardians do. The Guardians are tasked with restoring systems, especially systems that have been infested by negative entities. So rather than escalating conflict, what the Guardians did is they began a process of careful monitoring, mapping out the structures of the Verdants, where their pocket realities were, observing their patterns of influence, and identifying the key points through which they were interfacing with the physical world, our Earth. This approach reflects a fundamental difference in philosophy. So what that means is that as the Verdants always sought control through manipulation, the Guardians, on the other hand, operate through alignment, balance, and restoration, right? So their objective here is not to destroy, but to ensure that the natural trajectory of evolution, which we all know as the ascending timeline, positive organic ascending timeline, remains intact. Now, for those that are new to my channel, okay, the concept of ascending timelines represents a pathway in which humanity evolves towards greater consciousness, greater integration, and expansion, of course, of our awareness. It is not a fixed outcome either, but a probability, right? One that can be strengthened or weakened depending on collective choices and, of course, external influences. So that's why your vibration is important. It matters, right? Remember that. Keep your vibration high. You guys are contributing to the positive timeline trajectory. The presence of the Verdants introduces interference in this process, apparently. Their efforts to suppress disclosure and delay awakening creates resistance within the system, slowing the rate of which awareness expands. In response, the Guardians of Sirius B are said to have began implementing subtle countermeasures. First of all, they're going to be stabilizing the energetic field within the Earth's planetary grid. In other words, that's going to squeeze their pocket reality so that they can no longer be hidden. The Guardians are also going to be reducing distortions that were created by external interferences, as well as amplifying, coherence within human consciousness networks that will speed up the Great Awakening for the masses, and supporting the natural activation of awareness without forced acceleration. So the actions are not overt. They do not manifest as visible also. Instead, they operate quietly, reinforcing the underlying structure that allows the ascending timeline, the only true sacred original timeline, to continue unfolding. As monitoring continues by the Syrian High Council, it becomes clear within this revelation that passive observation alone would not be sufficient. The Verdants had already adapted once from destruction to infiltration, and their influence, while subtle, was of course persistent. So, in response, the Syrian High Council, which is the overseeing body of our local universe of Nebadon, authorize a limited form of direct intervention rather than engaging the Verdants in open conflict, which could, of course, destabilize the very systems they sought to protect. They deployed an advanced ally race to Earth. And I know that some of you guys know who I'm referring to, right? Who are the most powerful, most, I would have to say, fierce warriors in our universe? Can anybody take a guess? Who are the most powerful, fierce warriors in our universe working for the Guardian Alliance? The Ormas of Lyra, the lion people. Yes, that's who they sent to deal with the situation. So some of you guys are Urma starseeds. So that means that this eighth dimensional version of you coming from Sirius B to deal with the situation is you operating in a higher reality. So imagine if you could reconnect to that version of yourself. That means that you, whoever that human counterpart is of this Orma that is coming over here, is actually involved in this process. All right. You guys are part of the rescuing mission, or what we call the countermeasure, to destroy and eliminate the Verdants. All right. So let's continue here. I know some of you guys are thinking, what is Ishmael saying? All right. So this purpose of deploying the Ormas, of course, is the solution. Okay. Now, this advanced race operating under the directive of the Syrian High Council is also very adaptable, all right, capable of interfacing in both energetic and physical layers of reality simultaneously. They are multidimensional. Their role is to act as counterbalance, identifying points of verdant influence and gently disrupting their ability to maintain control. Their methods are subtle, interfacing with artificial signal pathways used for manipulation. They're also going to be shielding key individuals, right? There are a few scientists I've already mentioned that have also the blueprints of the advanced propulsion systems, anti-gravity aircraft, free energy. So they were also tasked to protect these key individuals that are also going to be used when the Trump administration, again, releases all the UFO documentation. And systems from targeted individuals. So again, they're here to also protect what remains of these scientists. And the Ormas were also tasked with creating energetic conditions that make concealment more difficult. So in other words, they are destroying their pocket reality and strengthening coherence in areas where distortion is most concentrated. So like the Guardians themselves, they do not operate through domination. They operate through precision and restraint. So with the introduction and the dispatching of the Orma warrior race, this counterforce, the unseen dynamics surrounding the Earth will begin to change. Thank God. The Verdants will no longer be operating in an uncontested environment. Their actions are now being met with resistance, not in the form of visible conflict, but through the gradual erosion of their ability to remain hidden and effective. And so this marks the beginning of a new phase, guys, okay? A quiet, multidimensional balancing act between suppression and awakening, concealment and revelation. At its core, in terms of the implications of the Verdants being, of course, first exposed and then taken out. When it really comes down to it, guys, it's about allowing the freedom of natural biological evolution. That's what it comes down to, okay? The Verdants apparently are trying to violate our free agency. They're trying to take our agency away. And according to the Guardian protocols, every world has the right to evolve without interference. through free agency. So the Verdants represent a path of control through what? Disconnection, while the Guardians and their allies represent a path of integration and alignment. The outcome is not determined solely by these external players. It is ultimately influenced by humanity, by the collective consciousness, right? That's why it's important to always remember to be in control of your thoughts and your emotions, because you are contributing to the collective consciousness of humanity. Because the more awareness expands, the less space remains for hidden influences to operate unnoticed. The more individuals question, perceive, and evolve organically through free will, the more the balance shifts towards the ascension trajectory. The intervention of the guardians, the higher guardians of Sirius B, and the Syrian High Council does not also signal the end of conflict, guys, but the restoration of equilibrium. The Verdants may have mastered concealment since 2018, as they were, of course, unseen, but no longer, thank God. And as the ascending timeline continues to stabilize, and yes, my friends, today is the 2nd of May, and you know it, we are still on that positive timeline trajectory. So as the ascending timeline continues to stabilize, one truth becomes increasingly clear here. The future is not being decided solely in hidden realms. It is being shaped through the awakening of those within the visible one, which is humanity, guys. So as the balance between suppression and awakening continues to unfold within this realm, the final phase begins to emerge. A phase that is not defined by external forces, but by the internal shift that is taking place within humanity itself. And that is the message, okay? We are the catalyst, guys. The Alliance, even the higher upper-ups, Guardian Alliance races, they don't want to just do all the work for us. They want us to do our part too, okay? They could only do what violates galactic protocols. They could only work within those parameters, but ultimately it is up to us. So for all of the efforts that have been attributed to the Verdants, right, these reptoids that have been running the shadow government through their lab-grown, soulless, inorganic, robotic humans, their concealment strategies, their suppression of disclosure, their infiltration through layered realities, there remains one variable that cannot be fully controlled, and that is human consciousness. Thank God. At this point, Galactic Jedis, humanity has been portrayed as a species on the edge of transformation. Beneath the surface of ordinary awareness, of course, lies a deeper capacity within our dormant genetics, right? One that when activated, once this is activated, it will alter perception itself, and then we will have the ability to see the aliens who are other dimensional beings. So this awakening is not sudden or uniform. Let's just call them ETs. I hate using the word aliens. Let's just call them ETs. This awakening is not sudden or uniform either. It unfolds in waves, as mentioned, right? It unfolds in waves. There's going to be the first waivers, right? The first emerging meta-humans, X-Men, whatever you want to call it. And then that's going to be followed by a second wave, and then by a third wave. And next thing you know, that's going to precipitate a whole new era, okay? A whole new era of human consciousness. So it unfolds in waves. Individuals begin questioning long held assumptions, right? Patterns once hidden become finally visible to the greatest number. Intuition begins to sharpen, and awareness expands beyond purely material interpretations of reality. Within this process, what was once invisible begins to be detectable, begins to be seen, begins to be understood, and most importantly, guys, it begins to become sensed. We're going to be able to sense what we haven't sensed, all right? We have the sixth sense, the seventh, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We have senses that go way beyond the 5. So this is the threshold that the verdants have been trying to delay. But thank God to the one infinite creator. Thank God for the guardians from the 7th, 8th, and 9th dimension that we were able to countermeasure. Because once enough people cross this threshold, right, this collective shift, the dynamic shift from isolated awareness to collective coherence will be more embodied. And so the verdants rely on fragmentation, on humanity remaining divided in perception, uncertain in understanding, and disconnected from its spiritual potential. But as awakening accelerates, right, fragmentation begins to dissolve. Information begins to connect. Experiences begin to align. Patterns repeat across individuals who have never met. Synchronicities. And slowly, the mechanism of concealment loses effectiveness. This is what they call the completely collapse of the veil, or the veil. I think I pronounced it right the first time, the veil. This does not occur through confrontation either, guys. This occurs through recognition, because once something is recognized, even partially, it can no longer operate within the same level of invincibility. So by the time this phase is reached, the intervention of the higher guardians of Sirius B and the advanced race deployed by the Syrian High Council, the Orma felines, it will have already began to stabilize the field. By the time this phase is reached, everything will have already began to stabilize into the new Earth reality. And so their influence does not override human evolution either, right? We're talking about the guardians here. They are only supporting it, right? They're only working within the parameters of their rules, the galactic protocols, right? Every time a negative invading race or collective or entity tries to take over a sphere, a reality, a plane of existence, a planet, by virtue of these laws, the guardians have to initiate countermeasures in order to preserve the natural evolution of the race. So the guardians right now have reinforced coherence within the planetary energy structure, stability within the ascending timeline, protecting the protection around the keynodes of awareness and development. And as mentioned before, the keynodes are the first waivers, those of you guys that begin to remember, and then as a result begin to undergo the integration process, and then the embodiment follows. So this creates an environment in which awakening can actually continue without being fully suppressed. As awareness expands, the verdants face a challenge they cannot easily adapt to at this time, okay? Their strategies depend on operating within blind spots, within areas of consciousness, but those blind spots, thanks to the guardians, are now being collapsed. So, yeah, we are living in the best times ever, guys. Overall, to end this presentation and, of course, transmission, we have to understand that in the end, it is all about human choice. What you do, okay, with life, with the things that you have, with the knowledge that you acquire, with the resources given, okay? Despite all external dynamics, there is a central principle here that I really want to emphasize. And that is that the outcome is never predetermined, guys. It is constantly being influenced by choices. Welcome to the multiverse. Humanity is not simply acting upon or being, you could say, being acted upon. It is participating. And that is a fact, right? We are co-participants in a universe that we are co-creating every given second of the day. Whether consciously or unconsciously, it is the direction its future takes. So again, humanity is not being acted upon. It is participating. Okay, it is participating. And every moment of awareness strengthens the ascending trajectory. Every act of clarity reduces the influence of distortion. Every individual who chooses to question, to grow, to perceive more deeply contributes to the larger shift. And so all of this is what? Leading to what they call the convergence, right? The convergence, which is a single event in which multiple timelines, probabilities, and influences begin to align toward a dominant outcome. And as mentioned in prior presentations, all of these multiple timelines are eventually collapsing into three, right? The trifurcation of three timelines. The outcome is the stabilization of the ascending timeline for those that are vibrating and matching the frequency of the organic ascending positive timeline trajectory, which is a pathway in which what? Humanity begins to become more aware. They begin to integrate in body, and then they begin to perceive beyond the third dimensional level reality. In other words, they go from limited consciousness to using the full deck, full consciousness. And this is what is described as the next stage of human evolution. Homo sapiens sapiens transforming into Homo galactus, metahuman, Homo luminous, superhumans, whatever you want to call it. And now this does not eliminate the challenges, my friends, right? We're still in this battle, right? The astral realm from those negative archon entities hasn't yet fully been purged. So, but what it does do, it changes the foundation upon which those challenges exist, because a conscious civilization produced by awakened conscious individuals like all of you cannot be influenced in the same way it was as an unconscious one, if that makes any sense. So to conclude this presentation, Galactic Jedis, in the end, the story of the Verdants is not about external forces attempting to control the world. It is about what happens when the world begins to see. Their greatest advantage was never their power. It was their way of being invisible, cloaked in a pocket reality. And now, thanks to the higher-ups, the guardians of Sirius B, who had dispatched the Irma, they're all going to be exposed and then taken away to face cosmic tribunals, okay? Cosmic tribunals. In the final phase, okay? In the final phase, it is all leading to one thing, and that is revelation, apocalypse, a massive revelation of knowledge that has been kept from us for thousands of years at a scale that has never been revealed before, okay? And this is also part of the galactic prophecies. This is what we call disclosure. And it is also important to understand that by the awakening of those who were always meant to shape the outcome from within, this is being achieved, okay? The convergence is not coming, guys. It is already unfolding, and it's happening every day through your thoughts, through your emotion, and of course, through the frequency that you exert. Now, I do want to welcome all 2,400 galactic Jedis that are in the house. Thank you guys so much for being here. I wanted to remind you guys that Emilia Ortiz just uploaded my second interview, and that interview is, you guys are really going to appreciate. He really picked my brain. I mean, I think out of all my interviews within the history of my career was by far the best. Okay, so much information was tied in together. I managed to pretty much put a huge puzzle piece together, connecting all kinds of data and knowledge. Okay, so yeah, that interview was by far my best, guys. Make sure you guys watch it. I did collab with him, so when you guys are done with this, just go ahead and watch that video. It's in our collaboration. I do want to give some shout outs. I see that a lot of the regulars are here. I'm going to try to shout out to some of the newbies. Truth 23 is in the house. Let's see. I want to try to be fair and give some shout outs to the newbies. Teko Yagi is in the house. Never heard of that name before. Truth CK23 in the house. Holy ship. What a name. Holy ship. With a P. Holy ship is in the house. And by the way, thank you for your super chat, sister. Who else is here? William Ryan, Trinity, Sylvia Vidal, Melissa Harper, Royce, Toys Comics, Wes Acton is in the house. Sherry11 is in the house. George is in the house. One more person. Who else is in the house? John Ayton. What a name. John Ayton -17 is in the house. A lot of people are asking me where I got my shirt. Well, unfortunately, guys, this clothing line doesn't exist anymore. It was through one of my buddies that has apparently stopped producing this shirt. So this is like one of the last shirts. So yeah, this is a unique shirt, and I wish I could mass produce it, but yeah, it's not my logo. It's not mine. He just kind of gave me a free shirt, so I'm wearing it. I hope you guys like it. Yeah, I know, huh? It's nice. All right, let's take some questions. We're only going to do about 10 minutes of Q&A, guys. I am out and about, and I still wanted to go live and give you guys a new revelation of this new threat that was apparently undetected by both Y-Hat networks, Galactic Alliance, until, of course, the Guardians penetrated their shields. I do want to thank Susan K for her donation, as well as Edward Wuzek. Thank you guys so much. And I also wanted to thank, let's see. I wanted to thank Jacob Shearer also for his donation. He says, "Thank you, Ish. We appreciate you at this time of ascension. Source is always conspiring to guide me away from path that do not serve me, and towards the highest path of ease, grace, celebration, and flow. Focus, focus, ascension." Yes, thank you. Focus on the ascension. Thank you for saying that. I agree with that, brother. I also wanted to thank Joyful for her donation. She says, "Since we all have the 12 stars now," are you talking about the 12 major gates? If you're referring to the 12 major star gates, what are we waiting for? That is a good question. Well, at this time, I do want to let you guys know that it is best to be prepared. Okay, it is best to be prepared. Now, I don't know if you guys heard my report, but since we recuperated the last two gates, right, the main gates, it does take a while to actually get the gates functioning in coherence. And one of the protocols that is a prerequisite for these gates to fully function and operate and activate is that there is no more world conflict, and that the collective energy field of the planet is stabilized and in coherence. So again, these gates are going to fire once we reach that state of collective coherence and stabilization. So one of the things that the Y-Hats are tasked with right now is to bring peace to the world and end all wars. Good question, though. Grant David Wilson, thank you so much for your donation. He says, "Do you agree the verdants and other dark hives have been inextricably drawn here?" And then he says, "Now to in their mind delay the inevitable, and from the light side, so they all be grouped together for all the banishment to the tribulation vault." To the tribulation vault. Let's see if I understand your question, brother. Do you agree that the verdants and other dark hives have been inextricably drawn here, now to in their mind delay the inevitable, and from the light side, so they'll be grouped together for the banishment to the tribulation vault? Yes, absolutely, yes. Um, all of these negative collectives coming from other dimensions, other realities, other universes, they're all going to be facing some sort of jail time, and some of them are going to be facing extinction. So again, there are two types of death. There is physical death, which happens when the soul, the consciousness which animates this avatar, leaves the body, and that death is really just an illusion, right? There's only what? Transition. There is no death. The death that we all have to be worried about is spiritual death, right? That is the complete elimination of consciousness, where you no longer exist as a conscious being. And so a lot of these are going to be facing that. Okay. And technically, because most of them are synthetic intelligences, it's not going to make a difference, right? We're just going to be eliminating the synthetic artificial intelligent factor that has been plaguing the multiverse out of the equation. That's what we're going to be doing. So, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. All right, next question. Jacob, thank you so much. He says, "Thank you, Ish. We appreciate you at this time of ascension." I think I've already read that. All right, next one is coming from Orvion. What's up, Orvion? Orvion was in my prior class. I met him. I had a chance to hear about his story. Let me tell you guys something about Orvion. Orvion is a very highly advanced being, right? He already knows who he is at the galactic level of reality. He's got direct access, multidimensional consciousness. So I wanted to give Orvion a shout out. Thank you guys. Thank you, Orvion, so much for being here. And your question is, my 72-hour started yesterday. I am on phase 2 right now, beginning phase 3, brother. I am noticing that I am having a hard time sleeping. I get up and lay on the floor to get like 1 or 2 hours. Well, that's because your body is no longer requiring 6 to 8 hours. You see, as we shift our consciousness into these galactic avatars, which are more efficient than the Homo sapien human mortal avatar, it requires less hours of sleep, okay? And because of the fact that we are constantly regenerating, right? This is the first layers of immortality. Lifespan increases to a few thousand years. And so you're constantly regenerating, looking 30, even at the age of 300, right? That's the difference between being in a galactic avatar and a human avatar. Thank you for sharing, Orvian. Let's see. Divine Image is in the house. If a soul can choose to be born in my family, why would a soul choose to be born in a reptilian Zionist satanic family? Because, those are part of a collective, a fallen collective. So all these individualized souls that are being born in these Illuminati families, they're all part. They actually have concurrent lifetimes and bodies and, avatars, bodies existing on other realities that are strictly reptilian. So all they do is they just use a little bit of human DNA in order to shapeshift and assume the appearance of a human, right? That's how they fool us, right? I think it was Justin Bieber who shapeshifted into a reptilian in one of his concerts. But anyways, I wasn't supposed to say that. But anyhow, all right, good questions tonight, guys. Good questions. So is my Wi-Fi still working, guys? Am I still on? Can you guys give me a thumbs up, or have I been kicked out of my live? No, I'm still on. All right, let's continue here. Because on my end, it shows that I'm paused. Oh, there we go. New chat. I couldn't, for a while there, I lost the chat. It was paused, frozen, whatever you want to call it. And so I don't know if it was my Wi-Fi, but thank God it's not. Okay, so we are still answering questions. Yes, some folks don't have souls. They are like NPCs, right? Non-player characters, background people. They're pretty much their bodies are just hosts to non-corporeal, discarnate entities that are operating from the lower astral realm, like the archons. Joyful, thank you so much, sister, for the super chat. She says, "Will a solar flash or some type of big event happen before Trump prayer on May 17th? And why is he really doing this?" That's a very good question. Well, to answer the first part of your question, nobody knows exactly when the solar flash is happening, all right? Um, because that signals and initiates the new age, a new world reality, a new earth. And about Trump doing a prayer on May the 17th, I'm going to have to look into that, Joy, and probably disclose that Monday night when I do the Alliance update. I don't know yet. So, Nathan, thank you so much for your super chat. What does the Ultimate Council do the above, the Galactic Alliance? What do the Ultimate Councils do above the Galactic Alliance? Very good question. Well, as explained in my Cosmic Origin class, where I break down the entire cosmic infrastructure, describing the different stages and levels of population 1, interplanetary system, to all the way to 5, cosmic system, and everything in between. There are different functionaries and tasks that are being conducted by these beings within realities beyond the, that are in the higher dimensions. And so the higher councils are mainly tasked with observation. That's their primary task. All they do is they observe to make sure that the lower intelligences that are operating underneath them, hence the Galactic Alliance, right, the Federation of Worlds, as it was then known before Anki's infiltration, that they are doing their job right. So all they do is they just observe. The higher councils don't really interfere much unless they have to. So that is what they do for the most part. They also do other things. Sometimes they hold councils with representatives of other universes, right? So you have different, you could say, ultra-terrestrial creator gods from different universes that meet in council as well. So yeah, there's still a whole layer of reality that we can't even fathom at this time, guys. But eventually, as we continue through the ascension, right, going into higher dimensions, by what? Remembering, integrating, and embodying, then eventually we do get to that level of existence. I like the way Jubilee puts it: observed, intervene, and educate. I like that. Yeah, there are lots of councils, exactly, because there are a lot of layers to reality. There are a lot of dimensions. So in each dimension is considered one of many layers of reality, right? All separated through the vibrational frequency. Every layer has its own council. So, we have Earth governments here in the 3D, right? And then we have galactic councils in the 5D. And then you have councils that are beyond the galactic councils that are going into 7th D, 8th D, 9th D. And then once you get to the 10th D and above, that's when you start piercing into the eternal realms, right? Which is what we call eternity. And there are also councils there, by the way. So yeah, there are multiple councils because there are multiple layers and dimensions. No. Are we going to see galactic tribunals? Yes. In fact, from what I was told, guys, is that when the first waivers of human activators, right, emergence of Homo galactus emerges, we are going to use our abilities to pretty much go to the four corners of the universe and end any what would be a remnant region where tyranny is still happening, galactic wars are still happening. So we're just going to go put an end to these little fires. And as a result of that, there's going to be a huge intergalactic tribunal where all of the fallen collectives, those that were in service to self, right? All the predatory races that were conquering planets, using them for their resources, right? Turning whole populations into mutant races. They're all going to be facing intergalactic tribunals. Yeah. And guess who's going to have the final say so when it comes to what happens to them? Us, when we activate our meta-human abilities. So yes, intergalactic councils, guys. I mean, the intergalactic tribunals. I'm looking forward to that. Somebody say, big fan of galactic tribunals. Right on. All right, guys, I'll take one more question. Again, I am traveling, so I'll just do one more question as I do have to get going. All right, one more question. How were the negative forces allowed to do the extent of what they did for so long? They have been broken many laws for so